Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That game is called Best Candy on the Block, and it's from designer John Barron. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page and find out more information than I could possibly tell you here. The way that you're going to do that is by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Now, just in time for Halloween, Best Candy on the Block is a competitive trick-taking card game where thematically you and the other players are kids or maybe adults who are just coming back from trick-or-treating in your neighborhood, and you're comparing your hauls. This is what kids do, right? Especially siblings. You compare all the great candy, hopefully great candy, that you got during the night and see who came out on top, and then of course eat it. Now in gameplay terms, as I said, this is a trick-taking card game. Everyone's going to be playing down cards that have different depictions of candy on them, but more importantly have different suits, different ranks, numbers, and try to win the tricks. And of course, as with any trick-taking game nowadays, there's always a few little tricks along the way. In this case, you want to have the best candy, but also the right type of candy. Avoid the really bad candy and the pranksters who are going to try to ruin your night, so on and so forth. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and take a look at a prototype copy of the game and just give you a little taste of what the gameplay is like, go over some of the most important rules. But do bear in mind that since this is a prototype copy of the game, what you see in the final version may change slightly, and that is, of course, why you should go to the Kickstarter page and find out more information for yourself. And I'd also like to point out that being a trick-taking game, there is, if you're not familiar with this genre of game, it's got its own terminology, like taking tricks and things like that. So if you're not familiar with how that whole thing works, I couldn't go into exhaustive details. Pretty simple, but like I said, trick-taking games have their own sort of terminology, and even I get tripped up sometimes using the word round and trick and interchangeably sometimes. So just bear that in mind, but it shouldn't be too hard. Let's go ahead and take a look. Then we're going to come back and we will discuss it further. Best Candy on the Block is a competitive trick-taking card game for 1 to 5 players. There are slightly different setups for 1, 2, or 3 players, but this will just focus on 4 and 5 player games. You should go to the Kickstarter page to find out more information about those other modes. Each player just got back from trick-or-treating in their neighborhood and is now comparing the candy in their hauls. In game terms, players will play numbered cards that represent candy in an attempt to win rounds of play and take tricks. You'll get points for each taken trick, but also bonus points for taking cards of a special suit chosen at the beginning of the game. But beware, as prank cards and eating too much candy, so to speak, will reduce the amount of points that you can get. Players will keep playing rounds until one player accrues 31 points and wins the game. There are 2 decks of cards in Best Candy on the Block. First is the main deck. Shuffle the 57 cards of this deck and deal 12 out to each player in a 4-player game and 10 in a 5-player game. The remaining cards are left face down in a deck called the Stash. The main deck has 4 sets of colored cards, and each of those sets has 1 each of each number from -1 to 12, including 0. -1 cards are called pranks. You don't want these, as each one will give you -1 point to your overall score. 0 cards are non-treats you can use to stall if you don't want to play a better card. There's also 1 card that does not belong to any of the other colors, the yellow 13, otherwise known as the king size card. We're going to get back to all of these special cards in a little bit. The rest of the numbered cards are associated with 1 to 3 suits, which are different candy categories, which you'll see up by the number. The reason this is relevant is because of the other deck, which is the suit deck. There are 10 cards in this deck, each one representing one of the candy suits, and each one with a number letting you know how many cards in the main deck have that suit. Shuffle these and deal 2 out to each player face down. Each player then looks at them, chooses 1 card to keep face down in front of them, and returns the other one to the suit deck, which is then shuffled. The chosen card will be your bonus suit for the purposes of scoring later. Continuing with the setup, reveal all of the stash cards in clockwise order from either a randomly chosen player in the first round or the player with the least points in subsequent rounds. Each player will choose 1 card from the stash to add to their hand. Finally, for setup, you'll flip up the top card of the suit deck. This will determine the trump card for the first trick. The last player to take a card from the stash will also lead this first trick. The leading player will play one card from hand to lead the trick, then each other player in clockwise order will play one card. The first leading card can be any card at all. If they play a numbered card with suits, they choose one of those suits to be the trick suit for the rest of the round. The other players must follow with that suit or the trump suit if possible. If one of the suits on the card you lead with matches the current trump suit, you must choose that suit. The leading player could play a -1 or 0, which means that no suit will be chosen until someone plays a suited card. -1s can only be played in this situation or when you cannot play a card with the current trick at all. 0s can always be played, even if you have the current trick in hand as a sort of stalling method. If you play the king size 13 to lead, you can choose any suit except whatever the trump suit is. It will always act as whatever the current trick is, no matter who plays it. But unless the current trick also happens to be the trump suit for the round, it can still be beaten by another trump card. The whole point of this is to win the trick for the round, of course. After all players have played one card, check for the winner of the round with priority going in this order. Highest trump card played. If no trump card was played, then it's the highest numbered card of the chosen trick for the round. And if no suited cards were played, it's the leading player who wins by default. Whoever wins takes all the played cards into a stack in their play area to keep track of. If the winner of the trick was forced to take a prank, the player to the winner's right will lead the next trick. If there was no prank played, the winner will lead the next trick. Keep playing new tricks until you reach 13 tricks in a 4-player game or 11 in a 5-player game. In other words, until everyone has played all their cards. Points are added up. You get 1 point for every trick that you took, -1 point for every prank you were forced to take among those tricks, and 1 bonus point for every card in your pile that shares a suit with your face-down chosen suit card. However, you only get these bonus points if you don't break the eat too many treats rule. If you win too many tricks, 8 or more in a 4-person game and 7 or more in a 5-person game, you will not be allowed to count your bonus points. That's it. If everyone adds their points together and no one has hit 31 points at this point, you start a brand new round of play and keep playing until someone hits that threshold and finally wins the game. That is best candy on the block. Well, I think everyone can get behind the theme of this game because almost everyone loves candy, unless you're allergic to it. And even if you're not of age to go, or of the right age to go trick-or-treating, or have kids who are the right age to go trick-or-treating, it's still a very relatable theme. Almost everyone in certain parts of the world went trick-or-treating at some point, and just loved seeing all of the candy that you get, and also the little bits of disappointment when you got terrible candy. Like, one of my favorite cards in the game is the pencils. The pencils with the Halloween theme drawings on it, which is supposed to make it better, I guess. Always a terrible thing to get on Halloween. So, in the wax slips and things like that. So, it was really fun to see those types of things. And so, I think in that regard, it's a great theme. Now, it is a trick-taking card game. So, it's not like there's a tremendous amount of theme to it. But this theme actually lends itself very well to this sort of straightforward trick-taking card game. And there's a lot of really interesting twists and turns in this game as opposed to other trick-taking games. The whole aspect of how the prank cards and how it not only can give you a negative point, which might be, -1 point, what's the big deal? But also not being able to lead the next round of play or the next trick. That's something. The idea of the 0 card was actually very interesting to me. I don't play a ton of trick-taking games, but I haven't seen anything quite like that where it's purely a stalling mechanism. But it's one that's very useful because you can play it whenever. You are not bound to following the trick or the trump card if you have the 0 and just want to stall for time. Play it out there. Let other players waste their high-value cards, not especially if you're coming 3rd or 4th and playing cards or something like that. So that's a very interesting aspect to it. The whole aspect of having a separate set of cards used purely for everyone to determine randomly, and then by a little bit of choice, what your chosen suit is, what you're trying to get bonus points for. It's like a whole other level that most trick-taking games don't have. And a very interesting one. And again, tying back into the theme because now you have the different candy categories. So that's all very interesting. I also thought, like, wow, the fact that you can play with a variable amount of players. Because bear in mind, if you're not familiar with trick-taking card games, many of them are 4-player games, full stop. And maybe one or more in the other direction. The fact that you can play this game with 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 players, I can count, is incredibly interesting to me for a trick-taking game. It's just not something that's there. I didn't have time to go into exhaustive details, and then, of course, there's different setups on how you play it. But that you can even play this game solo is definitely something to take note of. Another thing that I couldn't show you because I didn't have the physical components for it is that as part of the Kickstarter campaign, not only can you have a deck of cards for this game that has its own unique colored back, I think it's orange, Halloween flavored. Also, there's going to be possible expansion pack content that I'm sure may potentially be unlocked during the campaign that can add even more cards into the game and more different things that you can do, and so on and so forth. Because it is that type of game. Because it goes above and beyond a normal trick-taking card game, therefore, the potential to add more stuff is more than your average trick-taking card game because there's just more to work with there. So if any of that appeals to you, if you like this type of card game, if you know someone who does, I didn't even mention the fact that, of course, because of that theme and because of its simple setup and very straightforward complexity, it's very accessible to younger gamers, new gamers, casual gamers. I keep counting on my fingers for some reason. And a lot of people could potentially enjoy this game. So if you know someone who does or you're that person, listen, you don't have to take my word for any of this. Go to the official Kickstarter project page and find out tons more information and hopefully consider backing the project. You can do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen as well as down in the description section underneath this video. That is Best Candy on the Block from designer John Barron. Thank you so much for watching and as always for supporting our sponsors. Take care.